There are two types of people at the checkout line. The person who swipes a credit card without thinking, collecting points, building credit, living their best financially optimized life. And the person who pays cash. And according to every personal finance influencer, every bank advertisement, and every rewards card commercial you have ever seen, the cash person is doing it wrong. They're leaving points on the table. They're not building credit. They're not being strategic. Here's what nobody tells you. The cash person might be the smartest person in that checkout line. Not because cash is magic, but because the psychology behind why they use it, the specific way their brain processes money differently, produces financial outcomes that the credit card optimizers almost never achieve. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you the neuroscience behind why people who avoid credit cards think about money differently, why the rewards you're collecting might be costing you more than they're worth, and the one psychological mechanism that separates people who build wealth quietly from people who optimize their spending and somehow never get ahead. Stay with me because the last thing I'm going to tell you will make you look at your wallet completely differently. Let's start with a study that should be required reading for every adult. In 2001, Drazen Prelick and Duncan Simcester at MIT ran an experiment. They auctioned off tickets to sold-out sporting events. One group could only pay with cash, the other only with a credit card. The credit card group bid, on average, twice as much for the exact same tickets. Not 10% more, not 20% more, twice. Same event, same seats, same value, double the willingness to pay. Prellick called this the coupling effect. When you pay with cash, the pleasure of the purchase and the pain of paying happen simultaneously. Your brain registers both at once. But when you pay with a credit card, those two events are decoupled. The pleasure happens now. The pain happens later on a bill 30 days from now, mixed in with 17 other charges that blur together into a single number. Your brain doesn't process that bill the same way it processed handing over the cash. The emotional connection is severed. And when that connection is severed, you spend more. Not because you're irresponsible, because your brain is working exactly as designed. A 2016 study in the Journal of Consumer Research found that people who paid with cash reported higher emotional attachment to their purchases afterward. They valued what they bought more because they felt the cost of acquiring it. The credit card users, lower attachment, more buyer's remorse. The pain of paying isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's your brain's built-in spending regulator, and credit cards were specifically engineered to turn it off. Now, let's talk about the rewards, because this is where the conversation always goes. But I pay it off every month. I get 2% cash back. I'm winning. Okay, let's do the math. The average American household spends about $5,400 per month on credit cards. At 2% cash back, that's $108 a month. Over a year, that's almost $1,300. Sounds like free money. Now let's look at what the credit card company is making. Interchange fees, the fee charged to merchants every time you swipe, average 1.5% to 3.5% of every transaction. On that same $5,400, the card issuer collects between $81 and $189 in merchant fees alone, every single month, whether you pay your balance or not. The rewards are not a gift. They are a partial rebate of the fees the merchant paid, fees that were built into the price of everything you bought. The store raised its prices to cover the fee, the card company collected the fee and returned a fraction of it to you as rewards. You paid more for everything, got a little back, and called it winning. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. A 2023 study from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston found that credit card rewards represent a transfer of wealth from lower-income households to higher-income households. Lower-income consumers, who are more likely to carry balances and pay interest, subsidize the rewards collected by higher-income consumers who pay in full. The rewards program is not a benefit for everyone. It is a redistribution mechanism, and the people funding your cash back are the people who can least afford to. Here's the psychological mechanism that nobody talks about when they dismiss cash users: mental accounting. Nobel Prize winner Richard Thaler identified that humans don't treat all money equivalent. We create mental buckets. Money for rent feels different from money for entertainment, even if the dollar amount is identical. And here's what cash does that credit cards cannot. Cash makes the buckets physical. When you have $200 in your grocery envelope, you can see it, you can feel it, you know exactly how much is left. When you have a credit card, a bucket is invisible, the limit is abstract, the balance is a number on a screen that updates later. A 2011 Cornell study found that people using cash-based budgeting systems reported significantly higher awareness of their spending patterns than credit card users, even when those credit card users were actively tracking their statements. The physical act of handling money creates a cognitive imprint that digital transactions simply don't. Your brain knows the cash is gone. It doesn't know the credit is gone. And here's the insight most personal finance content misses. People who don't use credit cards aren't avoiding them because they don't understand how they work. Many of them understand exactly how they work. They're avoiding them because they understand how their own brain works. They've made a deliberate choice to keep the pain of paying intact, to preserve the mental accounting clarity that physical money provides. That's not unsophisticated. That's self-awareness applied to financial behavior. Let me tell you about the plan that almost everyone has. I'll get the credit card, pay it off every month, collect the rewards, and never pay interest. It's a good plan. Here's what happens to it. The Federal Reserve reports that 47% of American credit card holders carry a balance month to month. Nearly half. These are not people who planned to carry a balance. They are people who had the same plan you have. Pay in full every month. And then a car repair, a medical bill, a month where expenses just ran a little too high. Suddenly, the balance rolls over and the interest starts. The average credit card APR in America right now is nearly 25%. On a $3,000 balance, making minimum payments, you will pay $3,800 in interest over 14 years. You borrowed $3,000, you paid back $6,800 for a car repair. The psychological mechanism that makes this trap so effective is called optimism bias. Your brain systematically overestimates your future self's discipline and underestimates the probability of unexpected expenses. You plan for the best version of your financial future. Life delivers the average version. The people who don't use credit cards have often made a deliberate calculation. The expected value of the rewards does not outweigh the expected cost of the 1 month they don't pay in full, because that 1 month, statistically, is coming. Here's a dimension of this conversation almost nobody addresses. For some people, not using a credit card is not a financial strategy, it's an identity statement. Research from the Journal of Marketing found that payment choice is tied to our self-concept. Cash users were more likely to describe themselves as financially independent, self-reliant, and in control. Credit card users were more likely to describe themselves as optimizers, strategists, and reward maximizers. The cash user is optimizing for a feeling, the feeling of knowing exactly where they stand, of never being surprised by a statement. The credit card user is optimizing for a number, points, cash back, credit score. And here's an uncomfortable truth. Optimizing for the feeling, for control, clarity, and the absence of financial anxiety often produces better long-term outcomes than optimizing for the number, because the number is gameable. The feeling is honest. A person who always knows how much money they have, who never pays interest, has something more valuable than 2% cash back. They have financial clarity. Here's the insight that reframes this entire conversation. The financial technology industry has spent 30 years removing friction from spending. Tap to pay, one-click purchase, buy now, pay later. Every innovation has had one goal: make spending easier, make it faster, more automatic, less conscious. And they succeeded. American consumer credit card debt just crossed $1.2 trillion. The friction removal worked. But here's what they never tell you. Friction in spending is not a problem to be solved. Friction is information. The slight pause when you hand over cash, that's your brain processing the real cost. The mild discomfort of counting out bills, that's your financial immune system working correctly. When you remove that friction, you don't just make spending easier, you make unconscious spending easier. And unconscious spending is the single most reliable path to financial stagnation. The people who don't use credit cards have preserved something that the optimizers traded away for points. They kept the friction, and the friction kept them honest. Let me tell you what I want you to walk away with. Not a recommendation to cut up your credit cards, not a lecture about debt, a different way of thinking. The people who don't use credit cards are not uniformly unsophisticated. Many have made a deliberate, psychologically informed decision to preserve the mechanisms that keep their spending honest. They kept the pain of paying intact. They chose friction over optimization. And in a financial system engineered to make you spend more, that choice is not naive. That choice is resistance. Now, if you use credit cards and pay them off every month without fail, genuinely, every month, no exceptions, the math probably works in your favor. The rewards are real, the consumer protections are real. But if you've ever carried a balance, even once, and told yourself it was temporary,